faster and faster, and then it turns up while it's spinning. Is that a tilt-a-whirl? So I just shot a video of a tilt-a-whirl, and then that work actually is a loop, but it ends up looking like a zoetrope is, it's a round thing with a bunch of little drawings and slits, and then when you spin it in front of your eye, you see an animation. So you kind of had this effect from looking at the zoetrope. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
But this was made in a way also because this is the 12th cast of this sculpture, 12 of 12. And I saw it as kind of this Western trophy that had or trophy of Western art in South Korea that didn't really make sense there. But that seemed kind of easy. So instead of proving why it didn't make sense, instead I restaged it using Koreans. And if you forward.
Oh, right.
So again, you can see the track. So I put the exact same track down and tried to move the camera at about this. I guess it was taking about 2.5 or 3 minutes to make a complete circle. And these are quick service couriers who kind of ride around. I saw them as kind of the grease that keeps the city running. They're kind of always on motorcycles, and also to kind of slow it down so you can see them, because these people pop in and out of places, get you to sign something, and they're gone, and they often don't even take their helmets off.
So how did you round them up and get them all together to participate?
Well, first I approached a bunch of couriers one by one on the street, and that failed miserably. And so then I got a local assistant through the art center to get in touch with the company, and I basically hired them for the day to do it.
Great way to earn a living.
Yeah, they seemed to quite enjoy it. It was interesting to me because they, if you know the sculpture, like this guy that's in the middle right now with the kind of long hair, he looks exactly like this burger. And the guy that we just saw, I think, the guy who's coming around the corner that has his head in his hands like this, was really like a lone wolf. So when we would pose, he would go and kind of off by himself while the others would congregate together. So they kind of fell into their roles.
So it's very interesting. Another thread that seems to run through your work is this interest in sort of reversing the norm. In other words, making, in this case, animate objects seem inanimate. You make these people seem like sculptures. We'll talk about with gender roles when we get to the project here and the reversal of the norm there. So that's another thing. You tend to sort of defy the norm and give us the opposite of what a normal expectation would be, which is kind of what makes it interesting.
This is is that piece installed?
The way they were installed.
It's shown on two sides of a screen. So on one side, as you came in, I think you saw the couriers, and then on the other side, you saw the burgers. This is a project that I did at the Vancouver Art Gallery that I mentioned briefly earlier. And sorry, do you just want me to keep talking about the project?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And this is done with 5 sets of identical twins. And so you can see I set up a camping scene, and then there's the 2 kids, the kind of mother, father, and then in the background of the top one and the foreground of the bottom, you see 2 artists. So the artists were these twin women that were actually at Emily Carr at my old school. And sorry, I should have stepped back. They had asked me to do a live tableau vivant, so to do a live
Oh yeah, we haven't talked about tableau
yeah.
vivant, so
Okay.
Let's sort of brief this audience briefly on
Okay.
that whole tradition and why you use it all the time, how it influenced you.
Sure. So tableau vivant is kind of a pastime that started actually quite close to the birth of photography, which I think is kind of interesting because it shows this kind of desire to fix something, to fix an image. But it was a performance of, it kind of grew out of kind of bourgeois salon. So somebody in their living room would invite their friends over and they would perform well-known paintings or historical events, which sounds to me like a lot of fun. But I didn't actually go into. Somebody actually, while I was in art school, somebody said to me like, "Hey, what you're doing is tableau vivant." I mean, I didn't know when I started.
That's how you learned about it.
That's how I learned about it.
Saw your connection to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone else saw it.
I mean, since then I've done a lot of reading about it, and I suppose some of my projects are then influenced by that. But so they had asked me for this project to do to make a video live. So they, and I could tell they wanted me to kind of, be the filmmaker there. And I think from, I don't know, maybe since I'd gone through puberty and had makeup on my face, I was still embarrassed of kind of being in front of the audience or this performance. So, so I got somebody to perform the artist, and also just to kind of, to bring that, to bring the lens a little further back to show that as well, so that it's not just the performance of what's in front of the camera, but also the performance of the camera, of making the pictures. I suppose in the Prado project, there's that picture where you see us shooting the video in front of Velázquez's Las Meninas, and that's kind of the same impulse to bring it back and kind of to show you the production. In this case, it's a fake production. These cameras weren't recording, weren't doing anything.
And tell us a little bit about the setting and the theme and what meaning there is in the camping scene. And,
yeah. The camping, I guess I would say in this, there's no particular meaning in this. I think my choices for the camping scene were to have it be, I guess there were two things. One thing is that it had to be something that I could set up the scene, and this was on a very small budget. The budget for this project was $500. And so I had to, I basically went to the Canadian version of REI and bought everything and then returned it all at the end. So I put like $8,000 on my credit card or something and then returned it. So it was twofold. It was one reason is that I didn't have a big budget to make props. So things that were going to be reversed had to be able to be reversed. So camping stuff worked in that regard, whereas if it had text on it, or if it was something with text, it would be really difficult to reverse that. Or if it was some, like these tents are perfect because they can be mirror image. But anything that's not...
I see, text would, not read. Yeah.
So part of it was that. And then also, so then I suppose I had a few options of things it could be, but I settled on this because it seemed the most, not anachronistic, but just kind of out of place. It makes no sense to have this campsite. So I wanted to have a kind of realistic as possible campsite in the last place you would ever camp, which is the rotunda of the Vancouver Art Gallery. So it's like this marble, and there's a big staircase that goes up both sides, and it's like you could never camp there.
And were all the twins identical?
Yeah, they were all identical.
And how did you find so many?
Fraternal twins need not apply. I found so many. It's a crazy story. My travel agent, actually. I sent out an email to all my friends, and I don't know if this was pre-Facebook. When is this now? Oh, it's probably Facebook. So maybe through Facebook and stuff, but my travel agent actually found me like 3 pairs of twins. And the others were friends or friends of friends.
Now here we can see the effect you were talking about when the holding of the mirror. So tell us about the location and the what this work is about.
Yeah. This work is called Mirroring the Musée. Oh, I guess it's written there. I suppose I started to do works in museums, I suppose, with the ones we looked at the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts. Mm-hmm. And then after a while, I'm trying to think if this is the first time. This is maybe one of the first times when I was invited into a museum to do the project.
They came to you?
They came to me, mm-hmm. Yeah. And they were having an exhibition of, it's the National Gallery. It's confusing because it's called the National Gallery of Quebec. Quebec is not a country, but they hope to be one day. So they have a National Gallery of Quebec. And they have a contemporary art collection. They have a curator of 21st century art, which is something that, a lot of museums have contemporary art curator, but they have specifically a curator of 21st century art. And so they had an exhibition of integrating contemporary works in their collection into their collection. And it was mostly work from their collection, but mine was a commission. So they asked me to do a project in the museum. And so this was my answer to that, which was to, they had this room which had a hanging which I don't really like so much, but it's this kind of like salon-style hanging. Mm-hmm. But it worked perfectly for this. So I had, there were 2 walls, kind of a east and a west wall, and I made a mirror that was 69. So the mirror is the same ratio as the screen. And then I had people that work in the museum holding the mirror, and the people that you see reflected in it are also work in the museum. And so I shot into the mirror, and you see the wall across from them. And then if you forward, do we have the other one? Okay, we don't have the other video, but so I shot. Then I took the same mirror to the other wall, shot different people holding it with different people reflected, and reflected the opposite wall. And so in the exhibition here, you have the two different walls, and then we took a painting off the wall and put the screen in the wall. So you kind of have this. I didn't realize when I made it. I think I didn't know for sure. I mean, it's you can't always calculate how a piece will work or the effect it will have when you view it. And this piece was definitely one of those, because afterwards you had this kind of ghost-like effect where you expected to see the people you saw reflected in the space and they weren't there. And then you also expected to see yourself in the video and you weren't there. So you had kind of a time shift, I think.
Mm-hmm. And this is one of the works currently on view at SAMA, Blocking Adam and Eve, which was shot at the Prado in Madrid. How did you get the Prado to let you, it's a pretty major museum, how did you get them to say yes?
Well, I always, I asked. And I always get in fights with my wife because I always ask, and sometimes people say yes, sometimes they say no, but Linda always doesn't want to ask, and I'm always like, ask, and maybe they'll say yes. This was one of those situations. But I had a bit of an inside scoop as well, because I was showing at Casa Encendida in Madrid, and the director said, "Why don't you shoot at the Prado?" And so I said, "Oh, sure, why don't I shoot at the Prado?" But he knew the director, so he got me like a kind of a first meeting. But it's not. I mean, I think we were saying this earlier today. We were talking, but for the project here, SAMA and the people in the community and people that were volunteering and working on the project and working in the museum really put in a lot of energy to make the project happen. But in the one I did in Montreal Museum of Fine Arts and the National Gallery and the Prado, they basically just opened their doors. So they didn't have to
And it was the day the museum was normally closed, right?
Yeah, except that at the Prado, most museums are closed kind of one day, so I can shoot and it's really quiet. But at the Prado, it was the day they were closed, but it's the Prado, so they had like princes coming through and dignitaries, and so it was quite busy. Actually, I shot in front of the Garden of Earthly Delights of work, and at some point
we're going to see that.
Oh, we're going to see it. Okay, yeah. I'll hold that story.
Okay, so well, let's. We weren't able to get the vertical videos to work in the PowerPoint, so these are photographs of the vertical videos, which are currently on view. So, what made you want to use Durer's Adam and Eve?
Well, for one, there were a few diptychs that I wanted to do at the Prado, and this kind of loaned itself to that. But this one is really just it's a funny work. He's kind of trying to block your. There's also this thing with a painting. You see people often watching TV like from the side, and I think people don't have a problem to kind of correct it in your head or something. But in a painting, there's always that spot right in front of the painting that you want to be in, and if you go to a museum and someone else is kind of in that sweet spot, you sort of wait, and then when they move off, you kind of get in there, and then you have your kind of moment with the painting. So I wanted to have this, obviously fictional thing. It would never happen, but that this guy, this kind of uptight guy, is in front of the work, and he's blocking your view of it. And besides that, he's trying to block your view of the genitals, but it's a joke anyway, because they're already covered by Dürer 500 years earlier with vines and leaves. So those videos are in the gallery, so you can see.
And this one you can also see in our exhibition, Eros and Aphrodite, which was chosen initially to complement our forthcoming exhibition, Aphrodite and the Gods of Love. Briefly, you want to tell us where did the idea come from to have them almost kiss the sculpture?
Well, I had gone to the Prado. I kind of went on a scouting trip to the Prado, but I didn't really know it was a scouting trip. But I took just lots and lots of photos there. I mean, I didn't know that I would be allowed back to shoot. But after my initial meeting, and I thought, then they said, well, give me a formal proposal and this kind of stuff. But so I went around and took a lot of photographs. And so the works, in all my works, I mean, in the work I did here, you were there for the production. I do storyboard and kind of plan out, but then I also leave space for some improvisation in the moment. This one was one that I had sketched out, and they actually wanted to know what I wanted to shoot at the Prado. So
were they a little nervous about the lips getting so close to the sculpture?
well, it's funny because no, they weren't. And what they were nervous about, there was one. Do people know the Maya and Maya Desnudo? It's like these two paintings that are almost identical, but in one she's on like I can't say the chaise lounge. How do you say
The
it?
chaise lounge.
Chaise lounge. She's on one of those, and she's dressed in a dress. And in another one, she's naked.
This is the Goya you're
This is the
talking
Goya,
about.
yeah. And people think that it was in someone's collection that he would have he'd bring out the naked one when he had his friends over, and when people from the church were there, he would put the other one there. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to have a kind of middle-aged tourist with like ugly running shoes and a audio guide and a fanny pack standing in front of the naked one, in a way blocking, like this guy was blocking the stage, so standing right in front of the middle of the shot. And then I wanted to go shoot the same guy, but take off all his clothes, so he would just have the audio guide and the ugly...
Standing naked in
and
front of the
ugly
clothed
shoes,
one,
Standing
yes.
naked in front of the clothed
Yes,
one.
yes.
But this they wouldn't let me do, of course. But it was just a classic example. They don't mind me shooting Maya Desnudo. The nudity in that isn't offensive to them, but the male nude is offensive to them. This one they were fine with. I wanted to have... so in this one, I guess it's kind of the I think I was reading this, I think it's, Ken Gross book called The Dream of the Living Sculpture. And he talks about this idea of kind of, kissing a sculpture. I think it's Flaubert or something writes this thing about like basically making out with a sculpture. And so I wanted to have that. And also in museums, you're never allowed to touch things.
Right.
And so it's obviously breaking that barrier. He's, at that distance, the guard would certainly come over and say, hey, back off.
Were the guards sort of watching you as you did this?
Yeah, well, I'll give you an inside scoop for my production methods. Is that we didn't show the one of the naked guy rushing towards the painting in the thing. No, sorry, David. David, you can blame him for no. But that one and perhaps this one, but I'm not sure. But often one that they might be more nervous about, I'll do later on in the day, so that the security guard kind of follows.
You build
us.
their trust first.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and then I go against it. No.
You sneak one in,
Yeah.
is what you do.
But also
yes.
the guard is kind of really stays close to us until they realize that we're being careful, and then the guard relaxes, and then I can do things like this. But it's also, so they kind of are both having this moment with the sculpture, but then also in a way they're kind of kissing each other through the sculpture, I feel like you can, yeah.
And of course, we also have the photographic stills included in this show. All right, here's the one with the Garden of Earthly Delights.
Oh, yeah, this one is, this one, I mean, I like the way this one turned out in the end, but it's kind of a good example, I think, of my intention not being visible in the work, because it's always, people seem to always think it's either two nuns or two women in burqas. But what I had actually intended it to be, this is the Hieronymus Bosch Garden of Earthly Delights, the painting, and on the left you have kind of boring heaven, and in the middle you have, things start to get a little, I guess it's like everyday life, and then on the right you have kind of hell, and things are not good anymore. But I wanted to have it be that these were two kind of peasants that had come out of the painting, and we're then kind of looking back in at the painting. But it doesn't really work that way. I mean, the one thing I do like about it is that they work like, they kind of work as stand-ins for you as a viewer, in the way that they block the work. The story I was going to tell before is that right after we shot this, they came and they closed the painting, and it's got an amazing, when it's closed, I'm sure you could find it online, but it has a kind of a bubble earth.
Yes.
With a flat earth, like it has a bubble with the kind of flat earth within it, and it's amazing. Painted in grisaille.
Grisaille, yeah.
Grisaille.
Yeah. So what's the funny story, though, that you were going to tell us about that?
Oh, that was it. It's not very funny.
Oh, okay. But I was going to say also, you talked about before about the need that we all have to stand directly in the center of the painting to view it. So these are the people now also that are standing in our way so that we can't view the painting that we really wanted to view.
Yeah.
So we have to wait.
And I think sometimes I don't like to project too much on how people will perceive my work, but I think there is somehow, I think because it's real time, it's not slowed down and nothing's happening, that it kind of pushes you out in a way, so you can kind of go in and look around, but then you see people standing still and it pushes you out to kind of think about yourself standing in front of the work. And there's a kind of a symbiotic relationship in a way there for a second when you're breathing and you're kind of aware of your own breathing, or you're aware of yourself standing still and you're watching this other person do it. And I think it's also because it's recorded, but the real-time aspect makes it as if they're there in a way, or you sense it as a performance rather than as a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this was also shot at the Prado.
Yeah, in this one, I suppose similarly to the one where the woman was putting her hand into the painting, here I cropped, so I shot inside the painting. And so by removing the frame, it kind of broke down that, so that you can't so clearly tell that these two guys holding the mirror are in front of a painting. Like the space is broken down there, if that makes sense.
So they become part of the same space, the
Yeah,
painting
exactly.
and
Yeah.
where they're standing.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So this is the project that you did where you really recreated Jericho's Raft of the Medusa. Tell us where this took place and how that came about.
Yeah. This project actually was not my idea. An old friend of mine called me up. I hadn't spoken to him in 10, 15 years, and he had talked to a mutual friend. So I guess he had told this mutual friend, I want to redo Raft of the Medusa in 100 Mile House. And 100 Mile House is a town of about 2,000 people, kind of 6 hours north of Vancouver, in the middle of British Columbia. And so he called me, and he hadn't actually gone to my website or anything. His friend said call at it, so he called me. And I said, well, okay, you want to, and then I started kind of figure it out, and I said, who do you want to be the models? And he said, like, people, just like high school kids. And I said, and do you want it to look like Raft of the Medusa? And he's saying, yeah. And so I started to do the math and figured out you're going to need this, like, the backdrop would have to be like 40 feet wide, because a camera always shoots, you have angle going out. So if the raft's in front, then the backdrop has to be really quite wide and come out onto the floor. So I kind of tried to talk him out of it. He ended up talking me into it. And in the end, he took care of the local stuff, and I took care of the equipment and bringing in all the lights, and we shot it. And we actually did, you may go forward, you have some more pictures, right? So this is another detail video. So
here
yeah,
we can
so
see
here,
how you
so
did it. Yeah.
Here you can see it being set up in the local bingo hall in the top left, and there's all the castaways, and I think on the picture on the right, I don't know if you can see, I'm in there somewhere, and the guy Gus Horn, whose idea it was, is in there as well. He's like a local rancher and activist. It was quite interesting for me because the painting, the original painting was really a political painting. It was like painting the news. The French government had basically, the ship's captain had gotten his job by political appointment and ran the ship aground in a place that an experienced captain wouldn't have run a ship aground. And then I suppose they had that similar thing happen, right? A ship recently in Italy or something, right? Went aground, and then the captain took off. So they did something similar. They were on a raft, and then eventually they cut the raft loose, which was, kind of leaving them to die. And so Jericho painted this painting, and then it went on tour to kind of shame the government. And Gus Horn's idea, I think, was similar in a way, to kind of show that the government of British Columbia had kind of cut the ranchers and the forestry industry loose. I mean, in the works that I made, it's not so evident, but when we performed it locally, I think it was. And you can see on the
You have
bottom
an audience there?
Yeah, on the bottom left is an audience, because we did it 6 times live. And actually, I think
This really was tableau vivant.
yeah, this really was
Yeah,
tableau vivant.
yeah.
We had a curtain, and the curtain came up, and Gus Horn, who has a sense of humor, had raft rations that he was selling at the performances. So it was beef jerky, because there was cannibalism on the raft, and yellow Gatorade. And the bottom right picture is we also did one of the afternoons for a life drawing, for a local life drawing class. So that was, I suppose.